everyone, this is Ashley from Wholesaling Out of the Box, and today I'm joined by Shawn Bowen and Cameron Peters, and we are going to talk about the Mayo formula today. So Mayo stands for Max Allowable Offer, and it's something that we use to calculate the viability of all of our deals. We recommend everyone use it because we think it is the best way to evaluate everything. But we're going to go through and talk about what it is, how you calculate it, and some pros and cons, because there are other investors that hate the idea of Mayo or the 70% rule. So we're going to talk about why it works and why it doesn't and why it works for us. So to get it started, I already said what Mayo stands for, Max Allowable Offer. But Shawn, can you kind of talk about what it means?
Yeah. So
like, what does Max Allowable Offer mean?
So it just means it's the full amount that you can offer on a property, including your rehab. And the reason this matters is because when you go to a lender to borrow money, they're going to give you money based on this formula. And I think a lot of people out there nowadays talk about that it doesn't matter. And, it's kind of in the new world, the wholesaling new world that we're in, where people are saying like today as is comes, right? And that's what they're calling it. But they're leaving out this really important number that does matter. Like you need to know these. And one, if you're going to progress into rehab in any way, it's going to help you learn in the beginning. But yeah, max allowable offer, this is as much as I can offer on the property as you being the wholesaler to the seller, knowing that you're going to put together a spread and make money.
Okay, cool. And Cam, what is the formula for max allowable offer?
Sure. So when you're looking at max allowable offer, you're going to hear the term loan to value or LTV quite a few times. And the reason that is that's based off a hard money or soft money lender's criteria, right? So we normally, when we talk about the formula, we use the 70% rule. So that's essentially saying at 70% loan to value, I want my offer to be all in with the purchase price from the seller, the rehab cost for the end buyer, and my assignment fee. So in essence, if we have an ARV, we take that 70% times that ARV, we subtract out our repairs, subtract our fee, and that leads us to our Mayo. I'm sure we're going to break that down a little bit further, but that's an overview of how that's broken down.
Yeah. Okay, nice. And Shawn, why do you use this 70%?
So this is the difference between, like, if you're going to go borrow money, right? They won't give you 100% of what it's going to be worth. Like that doesn't allow for a profit margin. Also, it doesn't allow for security from a lender standpoint, right? So if I say that this property is going to be worth $250,000 and I give you $250,000 to buy it and then rehab it, where's the profit, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why this 70% rule has been made, and it's a lot of security. So in the lending world, we go back to the more experience you have, where the asset is, how much work needs to be done, how old it is, all these kind of pieces of the pie that have to be formulated to say maybe you can go up higher. As max, you might be able to go like 80% as a lender standpoint from somebody that's very experienced. But most times you're going to start from the brand new people. It's like their second, third rehab, and they're going to be in that 65 to 70% from a security standpoint on lending. So that 70% is the window in between profit and security from lending money.
Mm-hmm. And guys, this LTV does not just exist in the investing world. It exists in the retail sales world. That's what the appraisal is. The appraisal is going to come back and it's going to tell you it's $200,000, and the mortgage company is going to decide, okay, so if it's going to be worth $200,000 or it is worth $200,000, is it secure for me to pay them $200,000, especially with where the market is right now? Is it going to fall? Like, how do I make sure that I secure my investment in this home? Okay. And that's why mortgage companies, it's very rare that they will allow you to take out a loan that is higher than the appraisal value. So right now, where all these homes are going for like $40,000, $50,000 higher than appraisal, that's coming out of the buyer's pocket. And what that means is that in 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 years, when they sell, the mortgage company will have gotten all of their money back, or they'll get the rest of their money back plus the interest at the time of the sale. And if there's no profit left for the buyer, well, sucks for them. They're the ones that bought at 50,000 over appraisal. So it's like a lot of investors like to say, oh, this is just this weird niche part of investing and wholesaling, and LTV isn't real, but it's real. It's just called something different in the retail space. It's just the appraisal.
If anybody wants to take a step back in time to about the 2008 time period, when banks were lending at 95%, 100% of value, and look at the huge trouble that not the government, not the country, people, homeowners got into, right? Where they were up against the wall and they were drowning and they couldn't get any help. And that's the reason why this matters, guys. It matters in all ways, shape, and form, but that's where the Mayo comes from. Security for the buyer, security for the lender.
Yep. But of course they can't stop you from deciding you want to pay that 50,000 over. That's your choice, but you're just not going to get that. It's very unlikely you'll see a return on your investment from that when you go to resell. Okay. So my next question is for Cam. With the market going crazy lately, and now it's starting to slow down, but you were seeing these crazy sale prices. Why would we stick to, or why would any wholesaler want to stick to 70% when you can see that buyers are buying at higher LTVs than that?
Because the 70%, or right there at 71, 72, right there at the 70, hopefully below if you can get there, right? Gives everybody security for a market shift, which there's no crystal balls here. We're not looking to predict anything, guys, but we have noticed that the market is softening. It's changing. There's not as many retail sales going way past asking, like Ashley's talking about. Now it's maybe a little past asking or less. So you're securing, of course, your interest in a contract that you're going to in turn sell to a buyer for a fee. And that buyer is going to be secure to make their profit on the backside. So they're much more likely to want to buy that deal when they see that they have this security. They have about this 30% between their value that they foresee when they sell and where they're buying it from you. So it definitely accounts for the market shift. You start buying high again, and then the market shifts and you can't sell for what you thought, you're going to lose money. And that's real. That does happen. And obviously nobody wants that.
Yeah. And in addition to that, if you're good at negotiating in this market to get the sellers down to 70% or lower, then you're still going to be good at negotiating to get it lower during that market shift and when it drops back down again. So you will still be able to wholesale and invest, and you will still have that job. Whereas the people that can only do it because they're offering outrageous prices to sellers that don't make sense are suddenly going to be shut out of the wholesaling or investing world because they're not going to be able to do deals anymore. So by biting the bullet, and maybe you're going to lose a deal every now and then because of it, but you know your numbers and you're really working towards it, you're ensuring your longevity in this field so that you can come in and you can work whether the market is high or low or anywhere in between. All right. Anything on that, Shawn?
No, I think that's good feedback from both you guys. And I think this is really important for people that maybe they're just brand new into wholesaling, because it's a different climate for what's happening, but it happened back when I got in. So I was in 2010, and it was just after the 2008 by a few years, right? It was the bottom of the market. So things today that would be selling at $100,000 were selling at $50,000, 10 years ago. So it just goes to show, like, it's all about the numbers. And if you learn how to do this now as a wholesaler and you understand how to back into your numbers, you will easily progress into rehabbing if you want, because you know the numbers, you know what does and doesn't work. And another point of this is we were actually just talking about this with a recent buyer, of knowing that their loan to value usually spreads between like 78 and 82%. They didn't even say that out loud. They were like, whoa, wait a minute. How do you know that? Because we're calculating, right? So this also makes you, like, if you're sending out deals and like, oh, my highest buyer buys it like 82, 81. And then I've got other guys that buy at the lowest, 70. You know where to go to sell your deal, right? So it's really important to know these numbers, because it's going to shift. It's not a matter of fact if it's just when. And then do you shift your numbers? Because again, wholesaling is just going with the market. Market goes down, your offer goes down, right? The market goes back up, you ride up with it. So these as is sales that I hear everybody talking about from different worlds, right? But as is sales is like, that's what you sell it for. It's not always the thing. That's not it. They could have overpaid. Go back and ask that guy, hey, did you make money on that? Nah, man, we lost our shirt. We got in too much. We paid too much in rehab and then stayed too long on the market. So like at the end of the day, after our cost of money, like, we made 10 grand for 9 months worth of work. Nah, that's not a deal, right? So going over these numbers and clearly understanding them ahead of time, this has been the same practice all the time. And I don't care that people say they change it. It doesn't change. From a lending capacity to a borrowing capacity to wholesaling deals, it doesn't change. But if you know those numbers ahead of time, you will easily be able to transition into rehabbing. I just think it's really important for people to recognize that and take this information and really use it and think and reverse engineer it to why it does work. And then you'll be really ahead of the game instead of just listening to somebody say like, as is sales is what works. Well, how did they get there? How does that number work?
Yeah. I think that segues really well into this next question that I want to give to Cam is why should you know LTV and Mayo even when your buyers don't? So Cam does dispositions and like Shawn says, Cam knows which of our regular buyers, what LTV they buy at. And he sees a deal and he can evaluate and say, oh, I think it's a buyer A deal or a buyer C deal. So why is it important for you as the wholesaler to know that, even if the buyers A don't tell you or B aren't keeping track themselves of their own sales and LTV?
Because it's very important because honestly, I'm not in their books. I'm not in any of the buyers' books, so I don't see what they make on the end. Now having multiple conversations with them as we work through deals and we start relationships and we build relationships. I do understand ballpark of where they are and also understanding in which areas of the 7 cities or Richmond, wherever you're looking, what areas are you buying at different LTVs? Because it's really not just a straight blanket all the way across. There are some areas where it's 60%, right? Or it's 65 in some of the rougher neighborhoods where you're looking for certain buyers. So it's very important to, one, establish your practices to stick within the LTV that that you can move properties at, because in the end, you're making a promise to the seller. You're going into a contract with the seller to buy their property. So you need to fulfill that, or honestly, you're not going to be in business too long. So I think it's very important to know those things, track those things, and understand when you're talking to a seller that, yep, I know the buyer for this one. If not, it's another guy, right? Or it's another gal. It's 2 or 3 people, right? And it's definitely not these other 2 or 3 people because they don't buy over here. I already know that. Or this one is in just too rough a condition. Like the repair estimate is just crazy high, and they don't go past, let's say, the normal cosmetic 40 to 50 grand rehab, right? This rehab's going all the way up into the upper 70, 80,000, and they just don't do that. They don't mess with that. So it's important to establish those relationships and understand your buyers, understand their numbers, even if they don't, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. All right. So we talked a little bit about the Mayo formula earlier. And for those of you that may have forgotten or tuned in kind of late, I just want to go over it again. So it is ARV, which is after repair value, times LTV, which is loan to value, minus repair costs, minus wholesale fee. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about ARV. That's, you get that from comps. We've talked about LTV a lot. That's that 70% number. So now what about repair number? How do you figure out your repair costs to be able to add that into the Mayo formula? And Cam, Shawn, either of you guys can jump in here. Cam just answered. So Shawn, if you want to take a swing at it.
Take a swing at it. All right. So it's really important to know big ticket numbers when you're getting into a rehab estimate, right? This isn't where you need to know how many lineal feet of quarter round you're getting, how many lineal feet of baseboard you're getting, exactly what doorknobs are going where, and what paint color is this. Like, you don't need to know all that, okay? So what we call this is just big ticket items that will get you within $5,000 to almost $10,000 of what a true rehab budget is going to be, even with that little 10% fluctuation. So we talk about big ticket items being roof, siding, windows, foundation, and then working your way on the inside to kitchens, bathrooms, electrical, meaning the electrical panel, right? Knowing what's going on with that. Does it have central heating and air, or is it done with baseboard, electrical boards, and is it done with oil heating, right? And then moving your way over to what kind of floors are in it, and a repair number to the floor, and then a repair number to just painting the building, right? Like just how much is it per square foot to the square foot of the building. And the final is just doors, interior and exterior, right? By the time you get to those numbers, you've gotten to what we consider big ticket numbers. I mean, even in heavy days of rehabbing, those were the way that we estimated repairs, right? And then by the time you got through your fluctuation, about 5 or 10% of overages, you got close to almost exactly where you're going to be in rehab. So we took that same formula, and it's how we formulate to make an offer. So it allows us to get really close to what most people's numbers are going to be. And then what's funny is even after the past, we're recording this in October of 2021. So we've gone through a pandemic, we've gone through a massive supply shortage, massive labor shortage. So things have spiked in cost and prices, and it still sticks, right? Like you can take these same numbers and they stick to most rehabbers. So if those numbers still work, why would we not use that formula? Or the people that are listening to this, why would you not go to your local rehabbers, right? And run these numbers and make sure that they're consistent? Because then when you go to make your offer, you're close, right? You might be off by, $2,000, $5,000, $8,000 even is not going to kill your deal, because most of your wholesale fees are probably ranging between like 5 and 10. So you still have room to move your numbers. And I just think it's really important to make sure that you run those rehab budgets the same way that your rehabbers that are buying your properties. So go to it. If you're not rehabbing, go to them and ask them, like, what does it cost for these items? And then run those numbers. And I will say that most of our numbers that we have local even will run up and down Eastern Seaboard, probably by a few different states. You start going out Midwest, they start changing. If you get out to the West Coast, they're definitely not going to work, right? Different costs, different things. But we've had a few guys different state-wise, even on the Eastern Seaboard, come to us and say like, man, these numbers still work. But a guy down in Atlanta, Georgia, said they were using them down there and it worked. I know guys up in Maryland that are doing it, Washington, D.C. area. So yeah, I think that if you just get with your local rehabber, and you might have to pay some money to do this, get with a few of them and say, hey, I'm trying to go through, and so I can bring you better product. I can bring you better deals because I know my numbers are right. It's very important to go learn. I mean, you're building a relationship with these guys anyway. They don't want you wasting their time sending them garbage deals. Like, you don't know your rehab budget. I don't never rehab the house. I don't know. What are you talking about? Show me. Ask for that, right? And then pay them for it. Maybe take them to lunch. Give them some money for doing it. Pay them for their time. The return on your investment for that, even if somebody paid you $500, you paid somebody $500 for this, it's still worth it. Now you're going to pay that back in a wholesale fee, right? And now you're going to be able to use those numbers and get more deals. I think it's very important to know these numbers.
Yeah. It's just funny how you said Eastern Seaboard, like we are not part of the Eastern Seaboard. Like some guys on the Eastern Seaboard, and I'm like, wait, that's us.
Meaning like east to west, and you deal with West Coast guys, like, yeah, these numbers aren't going to work because it's cost way different and labor's way different, right? But we've had people here that in this local area, and I say from like state to state, north to south on the East Coast, have said, yeah, this works. And you're like, cool. So, and some guys even less. Yeah, it doesn't cost us much to do a bathroom. Cool. So you can pay more.
Yeah.
I get the joke though, because I'm guessing for anybody that's watching us out of the area, if you've noticed Shawn's boardroom, close to the coast.
Just a little.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, we've hit 3 out of 4 of the components of the Mayo formula. So just to reiterate, Mayo formula is ARV, after repair value, times LTV, loan to value, minus repair cost, minus wholesale fee. So I want to get into that last part, the wholesale fee. Cam, how do you figure, like, do you just put an arbitrary number in there? Do you just like throw in $3,942.12? No.
50,000.
Because Ashley will yell at you. But why else?
Yeah, so I think that it's very important not to get stuck on one single number for your wholesale fee. I think if you went around and you asked 50 people who just learned about wholesaling or been wholesaling for a while, say, what's the fee? 10 grand, 10 grand, 10 grand. 10's always what comes back. So I would say that your fee is as good as you negotiate one and your buyer will pay two. So when you stick to right at that 70%, like we're talking about, where you're bringing somebody a deal that's all in at 70%, right? If you have a $20,000, a $25,000, a $40,000 fee on that, your buyer is not going to care. And at the end of the day, you're going to make that fee because of the work that you put forth, the negotiations, the rapport with the seller, and everything you're doing to get the house sold there. So I wouldn't get stuck on the fee too much. I would say to structure your fee so that it lines up with the Mayo. So you're delivering a good deal so your buyer can make some money on the backside, and that so you can continue to sell them deals. Because again, try to remember here, folks, that it's not just the one deal. I don't think any of us are out here just wanting to wholesale one house, right? We want to establish a relationship and a business. So obviously you have two customers, your sellers and your buyers. So tailor your fee so that it's working out for everybody. Everybody's making money and everybody's making a positive, step forward in their life, whether it's the seller moving or the buyer flipping yet another house.
Okay. So then how do you decide what number to market the property at?
50,000.
Just a straight 50,000 every time.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
We're going to take
I see so many people doing that too.
Yeah. We're going to take a look back and understand what the ARV is and understand where our buyers are buying at. And like I said, we do have a couple of buyers that are closer to the 80%, right? We have a couple that stick right at like 74 for some reason, and some of them that want to stay 70 and below. So you have to price it for where it's going to sell. It's just like anything else. It will sell based on the demand of the market. This is another market, albeit an off market from the MLS. It's not on the MLS, it's off market, but it's still a market where we are selling contract rights to a piece of paper to an end buyer. So I would price it appropriately based on your numbers. That's why it's important to know your numbers and not just throw that everyone's 10, everyone's 10. Because can you imagine if you do 10 deals at 10,000 and half of those deals could have been at 20,000? You can miss out on quite a lot of money real quick if you're not tracking your numbers. So that's what I would say. So no, not 50,000.
Nice. And I will say too, that industry standard tends to be that people will want 10 and they'll put it out there for 10 and then they'll get 7.5. Yes. So industry standard for wholesale fees are like $7,500. I will say our average wholesale fee is north of 18,000. So, I mean, obviously we're doing something right. Just saying. But yeah, so let's go into that. That is the full formula. So we discussed, like I said, ARV, after repair value, LTV, loan to value, repair cost, and wholesale fee, and then what number to market at for your buyer. So now let's go into some of the pros and cons of the 70% rule or the Mayo formula. And for those of you that know, I really like things in groups of 3. So we're each going to do one pro and one con. So I'm going to make you guys think, but I'll let you guys go first if you want, or I can go first. I've already put mine on the sheet. What do you guys want to do?
Go. What you got?
Okay. So we'll do pros first. So my pro is that it is quick and easy to calculate. Mayo it's like I said, you take 4 numbers. Most of them, you pretty much already know. The only ones you really have to do work for are ARV, which is a quick comps search, and then repair cost. Which you do have to look at the house or at least get a general idea from the sellers, but you can kind of shortcut it and use like that 40 to 50 grand. If you know, like basics, just kitchen, bath, and some other cosmetic things. And it's like, okay, well, that's pretty simple. I'm going to say 40 plus another 10, just in case, keep it at 50. So it's really quick and easy to be able to calculate this formula. If you're talking to the seller and then you go outside to your car to run your numbers and you've already pulled the comps, I mean, hey, you can do that in minutes and be able to come back and say, okay, this is my offer, and get your signed contract right then and there.
I get Cam, go for it.
So I don't know what pro you're going to have left because I'm going to take the big one. So the pro is obviously that if you're operating within the Mayo, your buyer is going to be ready to buy, and their lenders, because upwards of the buyers you're working with are not dealing with liquid cash. They do not have millions in a bank account that they're just pulling from cash. They are leveraging money at a rate from a lender in some way, shape, or form. And those lenders will back them at the 70% when the numbers make sense. So the pro is your buyer is going to want to buy and their lender is going to want to give them money. And the three of you guys are going to want to same business together, honestly.
Nice.
All right. I think my pro would be, it's almost kind of along the lines of Ashley, but it was same numbers, knowing your numbers correctly, right? It's very important to be able to know how to formulate your numbers so that even if one buyer, like let's say we go for like, if you're always going for 80% buyers, your buyer pool is going to shrink massively. Versus if you stay in that formula, then your buyer pool proceeds to be bigger because it goes back to what Cam said, that you have majority of people out here borrowing money and they're using it at these LTVs that lenders are giving it at. So if you only stick with the north side of 80% plus, well, your buyer pool is going to be very tiny, right? You truly got to make sure they're cash. There's really no cost to their money, or they just don't want to make a lot of profit, and that's not realistic, right? Versus going back to what Ashley said, and it's quick and easy just to know your numbers by staying inside of this formula and making it so that you have a bigger buyer pool. So now you get to play both sides of it, right? I could go up and I could sell it up higher up here, which even though my fee was at $10,000, this guy will buy it at 15, right? Or if I need to, I have the $10,000, and if I need to back down a little bit, I can. I've got that room to go there. So I think playing off of both of y'all's answers, it allows to say it works to both effects. Like you got to have your numbers and know them, but then stay with the buyers that are going to pay the highest, right? It's really, really important that you play with that, because if you don't, you're just limiting yourself, right? People are so, we talk about this all the time too. It's like, well, what can I put on it? Or what should I get paid? Well, then the one piece that we didn't talk about was like in the beginning, you're singular, right? You're a single you're by yourself, right? You're doing all of it. You might have some VAs helping you, but you got to remember, after you get past this $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 fee number, you almost start losing money if you aren't exceeding that number, right? Because to operate as a company and then what you bring in as a fee versus what you got to pay out and then what you're going to net after that, that's a big difference. So then the norm changes, right? That's part of growing a business. So I think it's very important to play off of both of y'all's answers and say, yes, this is why this works really well and why it's so important to have the pro be this.
So what you're saying is that you didn't do the assignment and you're just copying me and Cam.
Oh no, I'm giving you your answers because I agree. I think you're right.
Okay.
It works. I like it.
Okay. So let's go on to cons. Cam, you really like that. Okay. So cons. My big con that I see a lot is, okay, well, if I'm doing this, every other wholesaler is giving the seller the number they want. Okay. Yes, you may lose deals. Probably are going to lose some deals because someone else is going to be able to pay higher. But we talked about this in the beginning where you're going to have, you're increasing your longevity in the market. You're making sure that you are only doing viable deals, and you're ensuring that you don't have to go back, hopefully, to the seller and ask for a reduction. I can get into this whole thing about sunk cost fallacy. Look it up if you want to, and buyers or sellers and reductions. And it's crazy how much this comes into play, but it's also super uncomfortable. So just save yourself that uncomfortable moment from having to say, yeah, I screwed up and I'm going to need you to give me the house for 10,000 less, by just sticking with the Mayo. But knowing again, that you probably are going to lose a couple of deals from it. And that's just life.
Life kicking you. I like it.
Life. Cam, Shawn, cons?
I don't know. I let's see. So the cons of not sticking with the formula.
No, the cons of sticking with the formula.
Oh, cons of sticking with the formula. Okay, so.
But it's kind of like I sort of turned it into, you know, how in job interviews they're like, for your weakness, make it like a faux weakness. And that's sort of what I did. So
yeah,
I didn't do the homework correctly, but still.
You were saying like it's uncomfortable to go back. And I think that's just because it's a difference between being in that sales position versus not. All right. And you're like, if I screw up, I screw up. I got to go figure it out. Right. I can say that exactly for one of the deals we recently did this past year. Like the square footage was wrong on it, and that was from the tax records. But I felt redeemed because there was two other big wholesalers in the area that were like, man, I missed the same thing. And I was like, cool, I'm not the only clown over here. So yeah, I think that I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Cons of using Mayo as opposed to using the like the as is comps.
I think you're missing out on money. I think you're missing out on buyers because if you just
that's if you're using but
so if you're sticking with as is comps, right, and you use that as a number, is that their consistent pay? Is that their consistent buy number? Was there a formula or wasn't it? Right? Because if you don't stick to something, like you just arbitrarily like, I'll go up by 10 grand this time. And that goes back to the statement I said before, where you go follow up with those guys. Go find them, put them on your buyers list, talk to them, and then ask them what happened with that one deal. Hey, it looks like, because you got to remember, wholesale fees aren't recorded. It only shows the final price. So you don't know if they paid 30 grand or 10 grand more. You have no idea. So it's really important to like back into their numbers, almost to the point where we can do that if we go with quick numbers, AR, what they sold it for, what we thought the rehab might have been, and then what they actually got paid for it. You'll never know that. So I think it's really hard to go with as is comps instead of sticking with a formula. So I don't know if it would be a con as much.
All right, Cam, we're going to go to you because we're trying to be fair and balanced here by showing this is what we do, but there are some issues with it. So Cam, let's see if you can prove me right.
So I think that if you don't stick with the Mayo, you may get more contracts, or you may get, not more necessarily, that's not the right way to put it. You may sign paperwork with some sellers where we would have knocked at that number. Okay. You may get more signed deals. However, you will have a harder time selling those deals because you're trying to sell them outside of the parameters that everybody is operating on. And you're going to end up either not selling your deal, not finding your buyer, right? Or going back to the seller after you told them $100,000 or whatever you did, right? And telling them it needs to be 80 now because you just realized that you didn't really understand the numbers. You can explain it in different ways, but that's really what you're saying. We prefer not to have that conversation and rarely ever have that conversation unless it was an unknown repair, i.e. a septic system that doesn't work and there's no way we could have known that, or just a crazy termite situation going on under the house, which happens in this area a lot. So outside of the normal thing, I think you get into the issue of you contracted up too high and now you're trying to sell this deal and you're not going to find your buyer. So maybe you're messing with the seller, man, especially if they're already have plans to move, right? They already have plans for the money. Some of those plans for the money are very, very personal, right? Family reasons, medical reasons, right? So you're messing with somebody else, and I'm just not comfortable with that. I don't understand why you would want to operate a business, I guess, without operating a business and understanding costs and numbers and how that works. So I think that's a con, is you run the risk of being in some really uncomfortable situations, and maybe you're going to make some money, but I don't think you'll make near as much money as you would, or help near as many people if you'd stick to the numbers and stick to a construct of a business and an operating environment for your business.
Yeah.
So I hear Ashley where she was going with this now that you gave your answer, and then what I see what she's looking for. So basically saying, like, if you don't stay inside of the formula, you're going to contract on a bunch of properties and you're not going to close them. Is that it? Did I get the price right, Bob?
No, you didn't. The whole point was like, why is Mayo formula bad?
Like, you're going to contract on a bunch of properties if you don't stick inside of it. If you don't, it's a con would be if you don't stick to this formula, you're going to contract up and then you're not going to be able to close your deals, right?
No.
Still no?
I mean, yes, that is true, but that's not what I was looking for. Okay. So we're just going to move on. I'm going to do a little bit of a tangent on sunk cost fallacy because I think Cam really brought it up, and I'll put a link in the show notes so that you can look this up. But the idea with sunk cost fallacy is you see it a lot with gamblers. You're at the slot machine and you've already put in like $5 worth of quarters and you're like, well, I don't want to move slot machines because I've already put in $5. what's another, $5 or $10 if I have more of a chance of winning if I stay here because I've already put that money and time in. When in reality, you actually have a better chance if you switch slot machines, but that's not how the human brain works. And so it's the same with deals and contracts with sellers. A seller will think, okay, well, I've already been on this with you for 30 days. I don't want to have to go through the process of vetting someone else, of negotiating with someone else, letting people into my house again. So I'm just going to stick with you, even though you're asking for a $20,000 reduction. And like Cam said, sometimes things happen. We have had serious septic issues or termite issues, things like that pop up that was like, no one had any way of knowing. So yeah, we are going to take this into consideration. We try to say, okay, well, it's $10,000. If you could drop down 7 on your price, we'll eat 3 of it. Things like that to help them understand that, we're trying to work with you. But if you're going into this and you know that this number is not going to work, and you're like, well, I see you want 100 and that's not going to work, but I want the contract, so I'm going to give it to you anyway. There are some wholesalers out there who do that, and that's super bad business. They know that number isn't going to work and that 80,000 is where they're going to be. So then when someone comes along at 85, they're like, well, no, I have an offer for 100. So then someone, the seller could have gotten 85 from someone else who told them the truth from the beginning. And now they're stuck with 80 from someone who lied to them. And that's just not who we want to be. We want to be transparent and open, and we want to do what we say we're going to do. That's a big part of our business. So that is, why we use Mayo too. It keeps everyone on the team consistent. It lets everyone know where we need to be and what we need to be looking at so that we don't have those mistakes where we end up leading sellers on. All right. So the last thing I want to go over is I just want to do a quick example of Mayo. We're going to use my trusty whiteboard, maybe, if it shows up well. This is the first time, so we're going to see. But all right, so we've got ARV. Can you see it?
Yep.
It's not going to work, is it? Yes, no, maybe.
You can see it.
Is it backwards?
Nope.
I can't tell from my screen.
You can
No?
read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So ARV, we're gonna do the quick and easy that we always do, is at 250,000. Okay. LTV, we're gonna do 70%. Repair cost, that was bad. What do we want the repair cost to be?
50.
50. All right, and wholesale fee.
10.
50.
50.
What did you say?
I'm kidding. I'm gonna let the joke go now.
Okay. We're gonna do 10,000. Okay, so the formula is going to be, right? It's gonna be 250K times 70%. Can someone do the math for this while I'm writing?
175.
Okay, so minus 50K minus 10K. So this was 175.
Yep.
Minus 50K minus 10K. So 175 minus 60,000 is 115.
Yep.
Boom.
So if this is your property, okay, or the property you're looking at, and you want to make a $10,000 wholesale fee, you can offer no more than $115,000 to the seller. Now, this is a freebie that will be online by the time this website, this podcast premieres, okay? And I'll link it in the show notes. I'm gonna give you a Excel calculator that will show you when you calculate this, what your Mayo needs to be if you want a $5,000 wholesale fee, a $10,000 wholesale fee, 15 and 20,000. That's something that we implemented in our system so that our acquisitions team can go back and easily see what those numbers are. So like this, for example, can someone calculate like if I can find my eraser, that 5K, 10K, well, we've already got 10K, 5K, 15, 20.
Yeah, for 120 is your 5 and 110 is your 15.
Yep.
Okay, so 5K wholesale fee, the Mayo is, you said 120?
Yep.
All right, 10, we said is 115.
Yep.
And then 15 is, oh, this one is an easy one because it just goes up and down by 5. 110. Sorry, guys. I'm not the math person in my family. I have to regularly call my brother to help with some of this stuff. And then he yells at me about it. Oh, it's just algebra. I don't understand why mom paid for your education. Yada, yada, yada. And then 20K.
This episode's getting good.
20K is 105. So this freebie, still not great with the light, but it'll be linked in the show notes so that you can put in your ARV, LTV, and repair costs, and it'll spit out what your wholesale fee, like what your Mayo will be based on these wholesale fees, so that you can quickly see, okay, if I offer 118, my wholesale fee is going to be, or if I, offer 108, my wholesale fee is going to be between 15 and 20.
I like it.
All right,
That's
cool.
super helpful for you guys.
Yeah. All right, so that's pretty much all we've got to say on Mayo. We definitely recommend it. Shawn and Cam, anything else you want to add into this before we sign off?
Learn this formula. Learn what buyers are paying.
Mhm.
Take the time to reverse engineer numbers. You can do this stuff. You can get close enough, right? You can call people and ask questions, and you can understand this, and you really want to. So like, take the time to understand and learn this stuff so that you're not just going off of, because the market was so high and it's as is comps, right? Like, that's great, but that doesn't teach you anything. All it teaches you is to look at a number and like, there's no reason. How are you going to go back, negotiate with the seller when you have no idea what rehab costs are? You can't tell them what the cost for an HVAC unit is. You can't talk about what the cost of a kitchen and bath. You don't know these numbers. How do you have room to negotiate? What does that sound like? Probably pretty bad, right? So like, really take the time to understand this, because it's going to be very beneficial for you in the future. And if you do progress into rehabbing, it's going to help you already from the beginning. So I think it's very important to learn.
Cam, final thoughts?
I would say everything Shawn just said, and remember that not only do we do a lot of wholesaling, but we also buy. So we're also talking about this because when we get deals from multiple wholesalers in the area that we work with, it's the first thing we do is run those numbers. And if they're a ballpark apart, it's not worth my time. It's time value money. I'm moving on to the next deal. Not only are we wholesalers, we're buyers.
And we're lenders.
Yeah,
so
send us some deals, but we're
Yeah.
all constricted by that lender, whoever that may be, us or somebody else, is going to want the asset that they are backing with their money to be secured. And that all goes back to the Mayo. And I'll hop off the soapbox, but man, it's super important.
yeah. Okay. I think this was a great talk, guys. Thank you so much for joining me talking about Mayo, Max Allowable Offer today. And for anyone out there watching or listening, if you want more information, check out the show notes. Visit us on at our website at www.wholesalingoutofthebox.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, anything you need to do to hear or see more of us. We're pretty much everywhere. And thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.